first thing I'm going to do is chock the wheels. The wheel chock's right here, so I open it like that. Make sure the door's shut. Don't try to open the door and this at the same time. Make sure that that's shut before you open this. Close it up. Make sure to check the elevation. So in this case, it's leading down this way. So we're going to put the wheels right here, the chock right here. It goes down this way, we put it right there. Next we get in the vehicle.
Wait, say that again.
So next we get in the vehicle, open the door, 3 points of contact right here. Step in, and then close the door. Then we take the key out of our pocket. Then we say we're going to perform a safe start. Make sure you're buckled first, just for extra precaution. You can always tell the instructor to do that, or the tester to do that, but you might not. And we're for a safe start. Truck in neutral. Cover the service brake. Key on first, just so it can go back and forth. Then you start the truck. Then we look at the PSI for the air brakes test to start. Currently we're at 100 PSI. We want to fan the brakes down to 90 PSI, as that's the starting for the governor cutout check. So we're at 90 PSI. Now we'll start the governor cutout check. The cutout should be between 120 to 140 PSI, so we'll build air pressure to that. I rev the engine. You don't have to, you can wait. But rev the engine, and then I'm going to roll the window down only a little bit, just to make sure that you can hear the pop outside. So keep going. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to tell the instructor anything, but like in this time period, you're just waiting for it to pop. Reset 126 PSI around there. Just the general area is good enough. So what we're going to do next is the brakes are already up and everything, so you don't need to worry about changing gears or anything. All you have to do is just have the key on, engine off. So you're going to do that. Make sure you can see the air pressure. Just make sure that you can actually do the leaks test, which is the next test we're doing. You're going to release the parking brake, then the trailer brake, and then just make sure that after it finishes leaking, you press the brake as hard as you can, and after the initial drop, it doesn't lose more than 4 PSI in that minute that passed. So, in a tractor-trailer combination vehicle. So, I'm going to go here. Oh, that was the time. So, after I release these two, I'm just going to wait for it to stop leaking, and then we're going to apply pressure, wait for the initial drop. Once that goes, then we start. I like to stand up here, it makes it easier so you don't have to have your legs shake as much.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure this is facing the tester. I mean, you don't have to, you can tell them when it's a minute, but it's a lot easier if you just show them the timer. So you're just watching the gauge. Currently it's at 100 PSI, it hasn't lost anything. Since it's in the middle, it's pretty much, you'll be able to tell if it loses any air pressure. He'll be looking over here, so you just want to make sure that if it does lose more than 4 PSI in the tractor-trailer combination vehicle, that you let him know. And this is 2 of the 4 tests, 2 of the 4 air brake tests. And then we'll also go over the pre-trip and everything. Still haven't lost any air pressure. One minute. So we didn't lose any air pressure. So that's the second test that passed, which is the leaks test. The third test is a low air warning device test, in which we'll fan the service brake down. Make sure to say the service brake. Fan the service brake, to which the low air warning device should come on at 55 or above for the PSI, and it's just going to be light. Just do that. Continue fanning down. It should be. There we go. It's around 70 PSI, which that's good enough. It passed the test. These valves are both pushed in right now. However, what we're going to do is we're going to continue to fan the service brakes down until 20 to 45 psi, in which the tractor protection valve test will take place, where both of the valves will pop out. If it doesn't pop out between that range, it fails, but they both should. Continue to brake. Alright. It was at about 27 psi, so the traction protection valve test worked as well. Now that we did the air brakes test, we're going to get out of the vehicle. Make sure to take the key with you, so have the key out and just have it back to off. We're going to get out of the vehicle, we're going to unshock the wheels. I opened the back thing before we even open the door, but you're going to unshock the wheels and then you get back in, safe start, and then build the governor cutout. But if you think you messed up on the air brakes test at all you have to do is just ask him to restart. We unshock the wheels, get back in the vehicle once again, and we are going to safe start. Make sure you have your seatbelt on once again, but he's going to stay in here, so you don't have to tell him to put his seatbelt on. All right. So, safe start, make sure it's in neutral. These brakes are already out because the traction protection valve test. Cover the service brake. Key on, just wait for it to go back. Alright. So once again, we are building up to 90 psi in order to start the governor cutout check. We're currently very low in air pressure, about 35 psi. So we're gonna build up to 90 and then we're gonna start the test. After we build up to 9, do the governor cutout check, then we're going to do our brake test. And I don't think he minds, but just make sure whenever you're moving, even in the test site, to have your 4-ways and your lights on.
Okay.
Just in case. That's what I did. He didn't tell me to put them on, but I just did it just in case.
Gotcha.
And then always start where it shows the ABS, just words, just so you don't have to flip through it.
Okay.
And then when you go on the drive, switch to the miles per hour.
Okay, got it.
Sometimes it'll bring you to this, where it just shows alerts on the tool. Just put it down once and bring the ABS.
Okay.
It's at about 90 psi, so now we're going to start our governor cutout check. So continue. And you only really need to rev anywhere from 8 to 13. It doesn't need to be past or under sports mode here.
Okay.
So still building 120 to 140 psi. Governor cutout check. Our pedestrians, so just make sure that when we're doing our brake test, to make sure no one's going this way. It's a little bit different if you're over there.
All right.
About 126 psi. So now we're going to start with our parking brake test. So we're going to release the trailer brake. Make sure our foot's on the brake at all times before we start. Put our foot on the brake, the parking brake test. Do that, put it into gear. We're just going to rev the engine. After you feel a slight tug, it's just a tug test. We're just making sure that the truck has good braking capability. Then we put our foot on the brake again for the trailer brake test, push in the yellow valve, put it back into gear. Then we're going to tug there, showing that the trailer brakes can hold the tractor and that the coupling is secured. Then we're going to do our service brake test. He doesn't really care if you forget to put it in drive. I would just put it away. Then both of them pushed in. We're going to get to 5 miles an hour, which you do at the test site, so make sure you do that. This is when I did that, just to make sure that's exactly right. We're at 5 miles an hour, we're going to stop. You notice there was no braking issues, indicating that the brakes are working well, and that left and right didn't steer either one of those ways, meaning that the suspension is working well too. So now that we did those, we're going to move on to the lighting indicators now that we did all the brake tests. So the first thing we're going to start with is left turn signal and the right turn signal. Then we go to our four-way hazards. Then from there we move on to our high beams. Left turn signal, right turn signal, four ways, high beams are going to be right there. Then this is where you have it to the tool thing, but you start with the def tank. Make sure that you point out where the def tank is right here, and then the ABS is located right there. Then after we did the dash indicator lights, we move on to our traffic monitoring devices and our windshield. So that just means the windshield and then the mirrors. So making sure that the mirror or the windshield is clean, there's no obstructions, no illegal stickers or damage to glass, that the mirrors are clean and adjusted properly. Then we look at our wiper blades. Wiper blades, making sure the wipers and washers, making sure that the blades are secure, they're not damaged, and then they operate smoothly. So they operate smoothly, and then also the washers are working as well. Then we move on to the heater and defroster. Heater and defroster, make sure that they're working up here, and which they are. Then from there, we move on to our horns. So we have our three emergency equipment. The emergency equipment. This is when the checklist would be helpful, just so you go in the right order. But we start with the fire extinguisher. It's properly charged and secure. Over there in the other box on the outside of the vehicle, where we got the wheel chuck, it's just the opposite side. You'll have the three reflective triangles, and then the spare fuses as well. Then we move on to the horn. So the city horn, the air horn. Then that is, just 1 second. You'll have the instructor. You're going to turn the engine off, leave the key on, and have the instructor do the light checks for you. So you're going to key off, engine off too, and then engine on. Then we're going to first start with the low beams. Low beams is going to be the green light, and then you say low beams, have them move to the front of the tractor to start. So low beams, high beams, left turn signal, right turn signal, four-way hazards, and the clearance lights. If the low beams are on, the clearance lights are always going to be on, so you don't have to worry about trying to find the spot for that. Then you tell him to move to the rear of the trailer, not the tractor, because the rear of the trailer, he can check both lights at the same time. So you say left and right tail lights, left and right brake lights, left turn signal, right turn signal, four-way hazards, and then clearance lights. Clearance lights are only going to be on the trailer, but he won't ask you that question. Mm-hmm. Then that concludes the in-cab inspection, to which we move to the outside pre-trip. So making sure that the lights are off. Take the key, put it in your pocket once again, because you'll need it for the maneuvers, but now we're just doing the pre-trip. Once again, get out, and then 3 points of contact. Sure that didn't miss anything.
All right.
We move to the front of the vehicle. Starting with the lenses. It doesn't say it in the actual description, but apparently I got marked down for it. So with the lights, you have to mention that they're the proper color amber. You can't just say that they're the proper color, even though it says that. So you say it's the proper color amber, it's clean, not broken or missing. For all the lenses. Then you move over to the engine compartment. Make sure that you unlatch it, but not before you do the lenses. So I think it's. Then yell clear. Perfect. Start with the fluid levels. So fluid levels are over here. First, you start with the oil. Dipstick's going to be located right there, and then just the overall engine oil, making sure that's between out and full. Coolant, inspect through the sight glass to remove the cap if the engine is cool. Make sure it's between out and full. Power steering, dipsticks right there. Make sure it's between out and full. Then for any fluid or air leaks, you look underneath the vehicle. You check for any puddles on the ground or engine or transmission leaking fluid, and then you check the hoses and the air lines to make sure that the condition is good and it's not leaking. Then you move on to the steering system. The steering box is located right there. Make sure it's not securely mounted and not leaking. Then you move on to the steering box hoses right there. Make sure they're not cracked, worn, or leaking. Then you move on to the steering system. Making sure there's no missing bolts, nuts, or cotter keys. Then you move on to the steering linkage, making sure that you check the link arms to rods from box to wheel. Make sure they're not cracked or worn, and then the joints and sockets are not worn or loose. Then from there you move on to the tires. Tires are located right there. First you check tire inflation with tire pressure gauge right here. Then you check the overall tire condition, making sure that there's no cuts or damages exposing body plies to tread and sidewall. Then you move on to the valve stem and cap, make sure it's not, no, yes, no, yeah, making sure that it's not broken or damaged. Then you move on to just the sidewall in general, making sure there's no bumps or bulges on the sidewall, and then no mismatched diameters on the dual tires. Then you move on to the tread depth, 4/32 of an inch for the steer tires, 2/32 of an inch for all other tires. Then you move on to the rims. Rims, make sure they're not cracked, bent, damaged, or welded. There's no welds. And then or elongated bolt holes and studs. Then you move on to the lug nuts, make sure that all are present, none are loose, no rust trails, no shiny threads, or broken studs. And then you move on to the suspension, leaf spring right there to start, making sure it's not missing, shifted, or cracked. Spring mounts, making sure it's not broken, not cracked, broken, or missing parts. Then you move on to the shock absorber, making sure that it is secure and not damaged or leaking. Then you move on to any leans, making sure that the vehicle isn't leaning anyway, indicating a suspension problem. Then the hoses and lines for the brakes, making sure it's not cracked, worn, or frayed or leaking, can supply air, and the couplings and fittings are secure. And then the inside, you check for any brake contaminants, making sure that there's no grease or oil that could prevent brake applicability. And then you close the hood. So once again, clear. Then we move to the side of the vehicle. We start with the lens and reflectors, making sure that they're proper color amber. So that one and then all those. Then you move on to the mirrors. Mirrors, making sure that they're clean and they're not cracked. Make sure that the brackets are not bent. They're mounted securely, and that there's no missing parts. Then you move on to the battery. The battery, you just open it up at the point where everything is. So the battery is covered. The electrical lines and cables are secure. They're not cracked or worn. And then that the battery covers are secure. Then you move on to the depth and fuel tank, which are both going to be right there. Sometimes it's in the battery cover, but this truck specifically, it's going to be the same spot. So the tanks are secure, the caps are tight, and that it's not leaking from the tank or the lines. Then you move on to the frame. The frame's right there. It's not cracked, there's no broken welds, no holes or other damage to frame members, including the trailer. Then you move on to the airlines, electrical and air connectors, all those. You just check the checklist to make sure you name it correctly. You're going to start with the glad hands. Glad hands, making sure that they're firmly seated, they're connected from the tractor to the trailer, that they're not damaged and they're locked in place. And then you check the air and electrical lines, make sure they're not cut, cracked, crimped, chafed, pinched, spliced, taped, tangled, or worn, or dragging in tractor parts. Then you move on to the fifth wheel. Fifth wheel, you start with the skid plate. Skid plate, making sure the skid plate is securely mounted to the platform. It's properly lubricated. It's not cracked or broken or excessively worn. Then you check out the kingpin, which is underneath, making sure that it's in place, it's not bent or damaged, or excessively worn. Then you check, apron, all visible parts of the apron are not bent, cracked, or broken. And then that there is no gap between the skid plate and the apron. Then the locking jaws, making sure it's fully secured around the kingpin. It'll be down there in the middle. And then that the release arm is engaged and locked in place. And then the fifth wheel locking pins, they're fully engaged and not damaged. Then you move on to the landing gear and clearance, making sure that the landing gear is fully raised. There's no missing parts. The handle is secure. And then the landing pad, the support frame and the landing pads are not damaged. Then you move on to the side and the rear of the tractor or the trailer, making sure that the DOT tape and reflectors, that they're present and securely affixed. And then the rear of the Then the rear of the trailer, making sure that the DOT tape once again is secure, it's really fixed, present, and that the lights are the proper color red, they're clean, not broken from it. And then you would check this, all of this, same as you would on the side.